Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to talk to you about biking skills and drills, specifically talking about climbing and descending. So, what's the whole purpose of talking about better biking skills and doing the drills to enhance those skills? A couple of key points to be made. First is being able to ride safely, especially when you're riding in groups. Of course, this all leads to better performance, improved efficiencies on the bike, enhance your ability to ride better and be able to adapt to the conditions out on the road, whether that's in training or in racing. Okay, so let's first talk about climbing. What are some of the key elements to climbing? And these points really speak specifically to either riding on a tri bike and or a standard road bike with clip-on bars. So first, thing to consider is when you're on a climb, especially a longer, steadier climb, is to sit in the saddle towards the back of the saddle. This allows you to be able to create a little bit more momentum along with standing. Standing can also help you to enhance your momentum. And both these come at a point maybe during the climb when you feel like you're starting to slow down, your pedaling cadence is dropping, maybe there's a steep pitch in the climb. Both of these elements help you to re-engage the climb and enhance your momentum. Pedaling is also important, and having good pedaling technique of the climb, making sure that you're focusing on smooth over the top and coming through the bottom of the pedal stroke. Particularly, you probably be a little more powerful, of course, on your pedal strokes going up the climb. Make sure that you remain supple though, and you'll focus a lot on how the foot translates forward towards the front wheel as you climb, and that will help you to be more powerful as you climb. When you're sitting in the saddle and you're engaging your pedal stroke, your glutes will be more active during this time. And so that's another key element to when you're sitting in the saddle and how that helps you to maintain that momentum. Climb at your own pace. This is a key piece to better climbing, not trying to climb too hard, too fast, especially early in the climb. Anytime that you quote, put yourself in the red zone, you'll wind up paying for that effort later in the climb. Always make sure that your cadence is around 60 plus for steeper climbs. You may even find that it's less than that for really steep climbs where you're having to stand out of the saddle. When you're on longer gradual climbs, cadence of about 70 plus is optimal. So you're going to wind up finding a gear selection that helps you to meet those cadence levels. So stay relaxed in your upper body is another key piece. Not tensing up in the shoulders and making sure that you're not gripping the bars too tightly with your hands. Certainly as you ride up a climb, especially a long steady climb, pushing or pulling on the top bar or hoods can really help you to increase the amount of pressure that you can apply to the pedal. And you can see in this picture here, when you apply pressure, whether it's pulling or pushing on the top of the bar or the hoods, that applies pressure through the hips, which you can translate into the pedal stroke. So some people find pushing into the bar is more effective. Some people find pulling on the bars are more effective. You probably find doing both throughout the climb will help you to increase your power on the pedal strokes. Okay, so there's a video that I want to share, a couple of videos I want to show you on climbing. Global Triathlon Network and Global Cycling Network are a couple of online YouTube organizations that wind up being able to give you some good examples of different cycling technique, and they have a couple on climbing. So let's take a look.
This Super Aero triathlon bike is built for speed on the flat, but at some point you will have to climb on it during a race. Now, the geometry is very different on a bike like this compared to a road bike. We're positioned further forward with our weight over the front end. Plus, the bikes are generally a little bit heavier, so it can make climbing quite hard work. So, how can we make climbing on a triathlon bike a little bit easier? Firstly, let's take a look at the main differences on a triathlon bike. Most triathlon bikes will have a cockpit with a flat base bar like these. Now, these will often be a lot lower than your road bike handlebars. And then, of course, we've got the size of the frame and wheels, which makes the bike heavier, but also makes it harder to maneuver, especially when you're getting up out of the saddle. So, on to the climbing. And to be honest, not a whole deal should change. We're still riding a bike up a climb. So a lot of it just comes down to confidence and being comfortable on the bike itself. Now, my position's a lot further forward on this bike. So as I'm climbing, I'm just pushing myself back into the saddle a little bit more. And the common mistake is to tense up in your arms and shoulders due to the base bar being that little bit lower. But it's really important to stay relaxed, to conserve energy, and so that you can freely move the bike underneath you. Whether you ride in or out of the saddle is really up to you, and at times the terrain will make that decision for you. Riding out of the saddle will allow you to apply more force to the pedals by using your body weight. Now, it does use a little more energy, but it may be necessary to get you over the climb. Just before you get out of the saddle, you may want to consider changing up one gear so that you're not spinning out. Now, when you're out of the saddle, there's a lot of torque going through the chain. So if you do need to change gear again, you may want to sit back down momentarily so that you can softly shift through the gears. When you get out of the saddle, there's nothing wrong with swaying the bike from side to side. In fact, I do this quite a lot. It actually allows you to use your body weight more by almost stepping into the pedals. And don't forget that you want to pace your effort on the climbs. It can be very easy to ride a little too hard due to the increased weight of the bike. And remember, whatever goes up must come down. And when you get onto the flat with a bike like this, that's when they really come into their own. When you're looking to book a race, you should always check out the course profile to see if your bike is set up for the course ahead. Now, there's a number of lumps and hills en route. You may want to take a look at your gearing. Do you have enough? Today, there's a lot of gear choices and cassettes on the market. For instance, I'm riding an 1128 cassette to make things a little bit easier on the climbs. The more time you can spend on a triathlon bike, the better. And being able to climb well on one isn't something that happens overnight. So give it a go and let us know how you get on in the comments below. And to see more videos like this,
Okay, so that really was a focus on using a triathlon bike. Let's see what we have to do. Excuse me, while we talk about a road bike. Sorry for the interruption.
When you first hit the bottom of a climb, the temptation is to stamp hard on the pedals. You're often excited and the adrenaline is pumping through your body. But the key to success on a climb, whether it be getting a personal best or simply getting to the top, is getting the tempo right.
There are two main factors that determine your climbing ability. The first is your technique, both on the bike and with your pacing, and the second is your power to weight ratio. Unfortunately, there aren't too many shortcuts for the second aspect, but there are plenty for the first. For longer climbs then, it's it's important to stay seated for the majority. Get out the saddle from time to time for comfort, and sit back down again as soon as possible.
If you follow pro cycling, you'll notice that a lot of the pros, Alberto Contador particularly, spend a lot of time riding out of the saddle. But this takes experience. But if you find riding out of the saddle is comfortable, then do it, because it is all about comfort.
Try to keep your gears light. This means spinning a smaller gear at a higher cadence. It might feel good to do 60 RPM for short bursts, but for much longer than this, you're going to risk compromising your performance over the duration of the climb. That's because lower cadences exert more force on your muscles and will do more damage. So keep the gears easy and spin.
Look to ride at a cadence of around 80 RPM, or a little bit either side. This is the optimum if you're looking for a guideline.
Try to keep your upper body as relaxed as possible. Keep a light grip on the bars and ride on either the tops or the hoods. This has got the dual benefit of not exerting your body in any way apart from your pedaling, and it also means that you can breathe easily.
And also, don't grab the bars too tightly. Want to be as relaxed as you can. I'm sure that most of you know already, but never climb like this. You lose your balance completely and you look like a bit of a weirdo. Always on the hoods. Swing the bike nice and easily. One of the other areas to work on is more tactical, pacing. Pacing yourself on a climb is so important to get right. Very, very easy to get yourself into the red. Now, as a guide, if I go into the red on a climb, I reckon I lose about 25 to 30% of my power output, plus the time it takes to get back and recover. So, make sure you pace yourself right.
Finally, and this is something that we alluded to at the start of the video, sometimes climbing is all about power to weight ratio. Lose a few kilos or gain a few watts and you'll soon be riding uphill faster than you were before.
Again.
Okay, so climbing. All right, so let's move on to descending. So descending is also a very important part of cycling and often overlooked by a lot of individuals. But when you talk about descending, safety and remaining in control is always paramount. Obviously because of the speed at which you descend and because of the turns and the different types of road surfaces that you'll encounter. But a few key points will help you to ride safe, but also be able to enhance your performance down the descent. First of all is to ride in the middle or the back of the saddle. Bend at the waist and hands are always typically placed on your drops when you're riding a standard road bike. If it's a tri-bike, then your hands are on the end of the bars near the brakes. And these 3 bullet points really help you to put an even disbursement of your weight over both wheels, so that way the wheels are in better contact with the surface of the ground. So you can see all these individuals in here, all are bent nicely at the waist, weight is distributed over the wheels, hands are on the drops, and allows them to descend at a faster pace, but at a safer in a safer manner. Okay, typically you ride in a larger gear or harder gear, if you will, down descent. That way you can adjust your pedaling as you need to, and it really helps you to be able to maneuver the bike a little better when you can ride and pedal down the descent, and it will be able to, you'll be able to adjust to any gradients, changes, or turns as you descend. Certainly stay relaxed, like when you climb, stay relaxed as you go down the descent with no sudden movements or braking or turning. Try to be very calculated in how you descend down a long climb. Okay, descending and cornering, super important. This is where You can lose a lot of time, but also this is where a lot of safety issues come into play. So a couple of key things to remember. Brake before you enter the turn. Always enter from the outside of the turn, enter wide of the turn, and always plan everything well in advance. Look at the turn that's coming up, know how fast you're going, and take into account the road surface. All those come into play and what you'll do in the turn. As you coming into the turn, you're braking, but once you're in the turn, never brake in the turn. Always try to hit the apex of the turn, which is essentially straightening out the turn as much as possible. A lot of times, if you're not on a closed road or a road that has a lot of cars on, then you're just going to stay to the outside of the turn, and you're going to need to slow down your effort. When you're in the turn, knee is always up, inside knee is always up, and you're applying pressure to the pedal on the outside knee and on the inside hand. So you can see in this individual, he's got this leg, the outside leg is applying pressure to the pedal. His inside knee is up, and he's applying more pressure to the inside of the handlebars here. So pressure, those two pressure points help you to create more contact with the surface and be able to go through the turn safer and quicker. And then when you're going to exit the turn, always exit wide out of the turn. Now, if you're already wide in the turn, then there's no sense in doing that. You're just going to straighten up the bike as you exit that turn. Okay, a couple of key things about cornering and braking. I mentioned that you can always brake before you enter the turn, and typically you're always using both brakes. When you are on a road that has varying surface conditions, or if the road is wet, typically you might vary what brake you emphasize. So in roads that have good traction, they're nice and dry, typically your front brake is going to be used a little bit more. Your front brake is the brake that has a greater ability to brake versus your back brake. So when you're on a road that has poor traction, use your rear brake a little bit more. And that might be if the road is wet, or if you have maybe a little bit of sand or gravel on the road, focus on using the rear brake. Overall, when you're cornering, the goal is to have a smooth transition going into and out of the corner. Try not to, and that takes a lot of preparation and view of what's ahead of you. I typically do not recommend that you use your aero bars as you're descending, particularly when you're going into corners. Only your aero bars when you are on a gradual descent that is nice and straight without a lot of turning in it. Okay, so let's look at a couple of videos just like we did for climbing with a Global Triathlon Network and Global Cycling Network, and see what they have to say. Okay, I should get this. Here we go. So,
not every triathlon race course is silky smooth or perfectly flat. So here is how to descend on a TT bike like a pro. Coming down a hill, especially at speed, can take confidence, concentration and composure. So perfecting your technical skills on a triathlon bike can save you valuable seconds and even minutes on your overall bike time. So how do the pros descend so fast? Firstly, find a nice open training hill to build your confidence. Then practice going up and down and repeat multiple times. This will focus your skills for descending and rack up some good time climbing too. Okay. Start slowly, and why rush? It is training after all. Take your time to choose your line and get comfortable with your body position on your bike. Then once you've had a few descents with control and confidence, then you can consider building your pace with control and safety. Now this is probably one of the most important points, but relax and breathe. Being tense and rigid on the bike will only have you fighting the bike rather than it working with you. So try to stay relaxed and soft in your upper body rather than holding on too tight. Next up, we want to think about where we're looking. It can be very easy to just cautiously look at the ground in front of us. Now what you want to do is look at the direction in which you're going. So on a corner, for instance, you should be looking at the exit. Do this and you'll notice an improvement instantly. How you distribute your body weight on the bike is what really separates the pros from the rest. As you round a corner, you should apply pressure to the outside pedal at the 6 o'clock position and the inside handlebar. This will just relieve a little bit of pressure from the saddle so that you can move yourself around, which is really useful when you're riding a triathlon bike, where generally your weight is a little further forward and can make the front end feel a bit twitchy. So as you're descending or rounding a corner, just push yourself back into the saddle a bit, and that will just make the bike feel a lot more stable. Now, it's unlikely you'll be needing your aero bars for the descent, and for a lot of races, they'll actually disqualify you if you do. But if you're confident with descending and you want to keep your speed up, just get down nice and low on the handlebars, especially as you're rounding the corners. Finally, stay calm and collected. Make sure you do all your braking and gear changing before the corners. You should avoid braking around the corners or hurriedly trying to clonk through your gears as you accelerate out of the corners. That is how to descend on a TT bike like a pro. And practice really does make perfect. So now it's over to you. And do let us know how you get on in the comments below. And to see...
Okay, so that's cornering using a tri-bike. Let's look at what Global Cycling Network has to say about descending on a road bike.
Perfect cornering mixes a raft of different skills. But if we really drill down to it, cornering is simply about grip and confidence. One without the other isn't going to get you very far. But as you're here watching a video about perfecting your cornering, I imagine you've got confidence pretty nailed already. So it comes down to grip then. How are we going to find more? Well, line choice is obviously incredibly important, but in this video, we're going to focus specifically on body position and technique.
Looking where you want to go is a very basic skill for a cyclist, but it's surprising just how many experienced cyclists forget how intrinsic it is to good cornering technique. And I'm not just talking about knowing which way to go or what line to take. Turning your head and looking at your exit as you enter the corner opens your body up and leads you through the turn. And the faster you go, the more important it is. It also prevents fixation, which is where you look at something that you desperately want to avoid, but yet are drawn to it by your eyes. It's often the edge of the road on the exit causing you to run wide or panic and jam the brakes on. Look at the exit instead and you'll carry your speed through and then out of the corner. You still need to think about the rest of your body though. So drop your outside foot to the bottom of the pedal stroke and then put your weight through there, lifting your bum out of the saddle slightly. Now, this gives you more control over the bike on anything less than a perfect road surface, because putting your weight over the contact patch of the tyre really helps them to bite if they're struggling for traction. Now, on a road with a perfect surface, this is probably unnecessary, but I've yet to find that road.
When we think about riders on high-speed corners, we tend to think of them crouched low over their bikes for stability. But in reality, that's actually only the case on bumpy corners or poor road surfaces where your tyres are struggling for grip. And that's because with a higher centre of gravity, you're much further away from your base, meaning that if your tyres do start to slide, it's much harder to correct it. Well, pretty much impossible, in fact. But the other thing that a lower centre of gravity is good for is on repeated, quick turns where you're much more manoeuvrable, you can throw the bike around much faster.
I think it's worth mentioning
that lowering your center of gravity isn't just about bending your arms and dropping your head. Because most of your mass lies in your torso and also your hips, then you want to think about bending at the waist and then getting your upper body close to parallel with the ground. And also, by stretching out of the bike in this way, you'll also spread your weight perfectly between your two wheels. Because there is a tendency, if you put too much weight through your front wheel, then you can cause it to lose traction by overloading the front tyre, but then don't put enough weight through it, then equally you won't put enough force through the tyre and it can break traction that way too. The way bikes are designed though, it does mean that if you stretch out over the bike perfectly, then your weight will be well distributed. Countersteering is something we haven't actually mentioned on GCN up to now, feeling that to do so will be to muddy the waters on more basic cornering videos. But considering this video is about perfection, well, here you go. So countersteering is when you turn the opposite direction to the corner that you're going around in order to initiate a lean, and then you turn the correct way with your body in the right position. Now, most people do it to a lesser extent without ever really thinking about it, but once you're aware of it, you can really use it to carve tighter, faster turns. Now, it doesn't generate more grip, so your top speed will still be limited, but give it a try out on the open road and you will be really quite surprised to see how much faster you can jam it into turns. To practice these techniques, why not take a leaf out of the mountain bike book and session a series of corners or a whole descent? When you get really familiar with a stretch of road, you can then start to implement these techniques one by one and then feel how they improve your grip and therefore your speed. Now, if you do want to go into line choice in a bit more detail, well, why not click up there and watch how to.
Okay, so that concludes our discussion today on climbing and descending. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and until next time.